If you're watching this and you think you're not good enough, that you're too far behind, that nobody sees you, I used to believe that too, until one teacher decided I was worth the trouble, and that decision changed everything. I grew up in a small public school in rural Kentucky, the kind with chipped lockers and Friday night football being the biggest event of the week. My family wasn't poor enough for sympathy, but we were struggling enough that college felt like a fantasy. My dad worked double shifts at a warehouse. My mum cleaned houses. Most days, I just tried to stay invisible. By sophomore year, I had mastered the art of disappearing. Back row seat, hoodie up, assignments half done, eyes down. Not because I was lazy, because I was tired. Tired of feeling stupid. Math never made sense to me. Reading out loud made my chest tighten. Whenever teachers called on me, my heart pounded so hard I could barely hear the question. So I stopped trying. It was easier to look careless than clueless. That's when she noticed me. Mrs. Carter, mid-40s, wore long cardigans, drank black coffee from a chipped mug that said, "World's okayest teacher." She taught English like it mattered more than oxygen. The first time she called on me, I pretended not to hear. The second time, I shrugged. The third time, she walked to the back of the room and sat in the empty desk beside mine. Not in front of everyone, beside me. "Why are you hiding?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. "Because you're not invisible," she said. "Not to me." I rolled my eyes. Teachers say things like that all the time. They don't mean it. But she did. The next week, she handed back our essays. Mine had more red ink than black. At the top, she wrote, "You think in images. That's rare. Let's sharpen it." No one had ever called anything about me rare. After class, she stopped me. "Stay 5 minutes." I assumed I was in trouble. Instead, she pulled out my paper. "You don't struggle with ideas," she said. "You struggle with believing your ideas matter." That sentence hit harder than any failing grade. She started making me read one paragraph out loud every Friday. Just one. I hated it. My voice shook. My palms sweated. Kids snickered sometimes. But she never let it slide. "You have something to say," she'd insist. At home, nothing changed. Dad still came home exhausted. Bills still piled on the kitchen counter. College still felt impossible. But in room 204, something was shifting. She gave me books that weren't in the curriculum. Stories about kids who grew up in towns like mine. Kids who felt stuck. Kids who got out. One afternoon, she asked, "What do you want to do after graduation?" I laughed. "Graduate?" She didn't laugh back. "No, what do you want?" Nobody had ever asked it like that before. I didn't have an answer. So she gave me one. "You should apply to college." I shook my head immediately. "We can't afford it." "There are scholarships." "I'm not smart enough." She leaned back in her chair. "That's not a fact. That's fear." She started staying after school with me twice a week. We worked on essays, scholarship forms, applications. I complained the entire time. She ignored it. The night before the SAT, I told her I wasn't going. "I'll fail." She showed up at my house at 7 a.m. in her old Honda, honked the horn. My dad looked confused. "She your ride?" "Yes, sir," she said before I could answer. And she drove me to that test centre herself. Who does that? Someone who refuses to give up. Months later, the acceptance letter came. State University, partial scholarship. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. I was in. My dad didn't cry, but he cleared his throat 3 times. Mum hugged me like I was leaving that same day. I ran to school the next morning to tell Mrs. Carter. She didn't look surprised. "I know," she said. "How?" "Because you worked for it." The last day of school, I stopped by her classroom. Desks stacked, walls half empty. "I don't think I would have done this without you," I said. She smiled. "That's the thing about teaching. We don't carry you. We just remind you that you can walk." College wasn't easy. I struggled. Almost quit twice. Every time I'd remember her voice. That's not a fact. That's fear. 4 years later, I graduated, first in my family. When I walked across that stage, I scanned the crowd. And there she was, sitting beside my parents, clapping harder than anyone. After the ceremony, I hugged her. She whispered, "Told you." Years passed. I built a career in communications, public speaking, ironically. The kid who once couldn't read 1 paragraph now speaks in front of hundreds. Every time I step onto a stage, I think about room 204, about the chipped mug, about the teacher who sat beside me instead of calling me out. Last year I visited my hometown. The school looked smaller, lockers still chipped, football field still loud on Fridays. I asked the front office if Mrs. Carter was still teaching. The secretary paused. She retired last spring. They gave me her address. I drove there without calling. Small house. Wind chimes. Garden out front. She opened the door and looked at me for 3 seconds before recognizing me, and then she laughed. "You finally stopped hiding." We sat on her porch for hours. I told her about my career, the places I'd travelled, the stages I'd stood on. She listened quietly. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You were never the kid who needed saving. You just needed someone to see you." That's what great teachers do. They see you before you see yourself. If you're watching this and you're struggling, maybe there's someone in your life trying to sit beside you instead of judging you. Don't push them away. And if you're a teacher, please understand something. You don't always see the results of what you do. But somewhere, years later, someone might be standing on a stage because you refused to let them disappear. One teacher changed my life. Not with grand speeches, not with miracles, but with 5 minutes after class. With red ink and patience, with belief when I had none, and sometimes that's all it takes.